Hello everybody. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so that you know when I drop my videos. All right, let's talk stockings. So I made two different kinds of stockings. One of them is super funky and me all day long. And then another one is my mother. I'm not saying it's bland. I'm going to call it traditional. She's so not bland. And this is not her stocking. It was just a really quick, easy, fun, and I could totally freak this stocking out too. Like I could totally make it do the things, just with some color choices and some quilting, but it was fast. If you like doing mug rugs, the pre-printed batting Quilt-as-you-go mug rugs, you'll probably enjoy this. It's the exact same thing, and this stocking can be done easily in about 2 hours, and that's really like cutting your fabric too. Maybe an hour and a half, done, knocked out, simple. It's very forgiving. It's beginner friendly. Nothing matches up, so you don't have to worry about that. My only issue with these guys, and the one that I made too, I feel like they're kind of small. I think this is, let's say it is, what is this, 12? Maybe 17, 18 inches. And then the opening here, look, this opening is, oh, my stomach is growling. Did you guys hear that? I heard my like loud growling. That wasn't cute. And I don't know how to edit that out. So if you heard it, I'm hungry, but I'm working. Let's see. It's 6.5 inches this way. It has a lining in there. I used an overlock just to kind of see what was going to happen. An overlock stitch, because they talk about, oh, just serge the sides. Well, I don't have a serger. My mother has a serger, and I want my own serger because that's just who I am. And so I used an overlock just to see what would happen. But that I was scared to clip the curve. So best practice, whenever you're sewing a curve, you probably need to clip to the seam, not through the seam. Do not clip the stitches, but it gives it a little chance to kind of breathe. I think this curve right here might have been a little bit more pronounced if I had clipped it, maybe here too, and then down here had I clipped it. It's fine though. I mean, it's totally a stocking. It's pretty. I chose to do a little additional quilting this direction because I really like straight line quilting. I think it's so pretty, but that was just an extra step. I should have put this guy directly behind it, but I don't know. I didn't. I don't know why I didn't do that. If you're doing it, put this guy directly here. This one's kind of off to the side a little bit for whatever reason. But it's easy, it's forgiving, it's simple. If you want to make your own stockings and have them all beautiful, however you decorate, whatever your colors are for the holiday season, I say you check it out. June Tailor's pre-printed. Now the directions for binding it are trash. But I think the directions for binding her other stuff are kind of trashy too. Like, I mean, not trash, but not all the way helpful in the way that they could be. You really need to watch some videos. So for this one, I did the technique that I don't love, but it was fast, which is I sewed it to the front the way that I would a regular quilt. I rolled it over to the back, and then I tried to sew in the ditch. This one, I'm very close to the ditch. I'm not directly in that sucker, but I'm close. And it's red, so you really can't see it. And that means that it got caught on this side, you see? Because I caught myself stitching in the ditch. It was fast. And I took the platform off of my sewing machine and I put it on the free arm and just let this sucker go around. If you don't have that option, you can still totally do this. It's just when you're sewing, you're just going to hold it like this and just rotate it all the way around. But I prefer really to hand stitch, but I just didn't have the time to hand stitch this stuff on the back. I just didn't have the time. So I went ahead and machine stitched it through. And other than that, I think this came out really cool. Again, it's beginner friendly. It's quick. It's customizable. I think you could really do this technique with your own batting and then draw your lines however you want to freak out your stocking, like however you want to do it, however you want to decorate it. Yeah, steps of this. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys also, this can be done with a jelly roll, 2.5 inch strips, or you can cut your own 2.5-inch strips. And the strip sizes are not the exact same for the front and the back. I feel like that's important to tell you. They're different. So you're going to have to actually read the pattern and make sure you're cutting the strip the right size for your strips. And be careful where you're placing them, because this is kind of just like a foundation paper piecing project. It's similar, where you need to make sure that when you flip your fabric back, it covers that area. You'll see more about that in the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please let me know down in the description bar. Talk to me, comment, say the things. All right, guys. Thanks again. Bye-bye. Okay, so another Quilt-as-you-go kit by Tailor. They're great. This was fast. Let's do it. I am freshening up the edge. I think I did another half a yard here of fabric, of backing fabric. This is going to be the lining for your stocking. And I'm following the directions and cutting them down to approximately whatever the pattern calls for. I notice with her backing stuff, I like to go a little bit larger than whatever she's saying. But then again, I waste a lot of fabric. Like, I throw a lot of my scraps right out because I'm not going to use them. I am a buy more fabric person for whatever project you're using, and then get rid of the rest. So don't judge me. Just, yeah, that's how I get out. If you've never seen a jelly roll opened up, this is what it looks like. They call this like a roll up because, again, I forget who owns the term jelly roll, but they're all the same. 2.5-inch strips folded in half. I am picking the colors, trying to get a nice variety. They've got some that read more solid, some that read more black, some that read more gray, red, white, blah, blah, blah. I was checking to see how many strips you need for each side of the stocking. And they're not identical. I don't know how many times I can say that. I thought right now I'm cutting like, oh, okay, so once I cut one side, I'll be done for the other. I'm sure they're identical. No, there are different dimensions needed. So I could have been a little bit, I could have done better with how much fabric I used here, but whatever. I had a whole jelly roll for just this. So, and this is an old jelly roll. I think this is a Robert Kaufman jelly roll. And I got it last year when I thought I was going to make tree skirts. So I cut all of the strips up, all of the requirements. Again, they are not the same. So you will have to go through and read the directions and see which ones are how long, blah, blah, blah. Now I am cutting around. I'm leaving about 1 inch to 1/2 of an inch around the batting, just to make it more manageable so that we can see it without that other stuff getting in the way. Now I'm going to spray some basting spray by Tailor on the back of the batting. And it works really well. About 12 inches away and just missed it. And it really does work. Great, great, great basting spray. So here I am. I'm going to come back after I've sprayed that and just press it down. You cannot iron this stuff before you start stitching on it because it's going to distort it. Even though it's distorted already, it will distort it more. And or to shrink it, anything could happen. So I'm doing the same thing for the other side. I'm just rough cutting around to manage it a little bit better. And then I'm going to spray the back of that with some basting spray. You guys would laugh if you knew where I was spraying the basting spray because I am not going outside just to do this. So, and once it dries without being sticky. So I might go to a very unused corner of my home and spray the stuff and act like nothing ever happened. Don't judge me. So then I'll just go ahead and smooth it out. And make sure you press the backing fabric really nice and crisp. I did not do that, but you should. And now make sure you use an obnoxious colored thread for this. If your backing is green, use neon yellow. I'm using red here. You want to be able to see this. So use something obnoxiously colorful for that step. So now this is kind of like paper. This is kind of like foundation piecing. Your first strip is going to go up. It's going to face you. And I'm glad that I'm using stuff that is not solids so that you know how to do this. Right sides must go together, and make sure that it covers that next section because you're going to flip it. So don't just line it up together. You have to line it up to make sure that when you flip it, it's going to cover that section. It says to sew a 1/4 inch seam. I suggest that you sew slightly less than a 1/4 inch, slightly less. They always say the scant 1/4 inch. Yeah, whatever. And then you see how I just flipped it? And now I'm using a Violet Craft roller press to just roll out the seams. You see how I'm checking to see where it fits? It does not fit necessarily straight with the one before it. You got to kind of move it down a little bit. And now I went ahead and sewed that, and then I'm going to rotate it and just press the seams with my roller ball. Do not use the iron yet. See, I'm checking the size to make sure it fits. Right sides together. Same thing with this back. This is now the backing. See that long strip there? Got to make sure that it's going to fit all that section to the top. And it's numbered, so you know you're going to go back and forth. I decided to add a little bit of more quilting, even though it's already done. It's quilted as you go. I've sewn through the top, the batting, and the backing. But I decided I wanted to be creative and add just a little bit more here. Whatever. Not a big deal. So I'm going through with my ruler and I'm making the lines. I think I'm doing 2.5 inches. They're big. They're not small. Yeah, it is 2.5 inches. Excuse me, because it's I chose to do 2.5 inches because the strips were 2.5 inches. So I am using a friction pen and a chalk marker. The chalk shows up on the dark colors. The friction shows up on the lighter colors. It works. So I just go back and forth using those. And I'm simply working my way down. I just chose an angle, nothing special. I just made sure that the lines lined up with the 2.5 inch strips. And then I just worked my way down. Now, this is why this was important, so that you can see your line. I've done one of these where I didn't do that and I struggled. So that's why you want to make sure you have obnoxiously bright thread when you're doing that step. Now we're putting right sides together. This is already lined. I'm going to go on ahead and pin it so that it doesn't shift too much. Do not be concerned if you did not cut them out perfectly when you sew it together. Not a big deal. They ask that you take a 1/2 inch seam. So this is, I'm measuring a 1/2 inch. This wasn't necessary. I could have done a 1/4 inch, but this is a seam gauge. You drop the needle down in whatever hole you want, and then you move your guide to adjust. And now I'm sewing a 1/2 inch all the way around. I think a 1/2 inch was a little bit more generous than it needed, but. And make sure that you start and stop at the top. So you don't sew it closed, but you want to make sure you backstitch because you're going to be turning this. And you know, whenever you turn something, it is going to have some tension on it. So be sure to back tack at the beginning and the end, and go ahead and just start at the top. Don't sew it closed, but start at the top and just work your way around. So now I decided people use sergers to overlock these. I decided to see what would happen if I overlocked this. And all that's going to do is keep your strings and your batting all nice and tidy. Now, then I got confused because whenever you have a curve, you should be clipping it. And I'm like, well, shoot, I just overlocked this sucker. So now do I cut into it? I'm like, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? So then I didn't know what to do. I stared at it for a while. I was just staring like, should I clip it? Should I not? Will it be okay? It was fine. It was still able to turn without a big issue. But in the future, I don't know that I would do that again. I just tried it though. I just wanted to see what would happen if I use an overlock stitch on a regular sewing machine and not a serger to try to keep the seams just pretty and finished on the inside. That's something I might use for something else going down the line. I don't know. We'll see. It was fun to try it. I'm all about trying new things, trying all the stitches on your sewing machine. I don't know,
a couple hundred, I think I have on there. I don't know how many I have. They call it a 9960. Maybe I have 60. Who knows? But I say you use them, play with them, see what they do. So now you just flip it inside out and bam, that's it. That's pretty much your stocking. Now the directions are horrible. They are horrible directions. They're not, especially with this binding, but basically you want to bind it the same way you would a quilt. I'm going to do the easy binding method. Yeah, this is just the easy way to do it. I'm going to cut this off to reduce some of the bulk because I don't want it too bulky. But you see, I just folded it down and now I'm folding it in half again. So I folded it down at a 45-degree angle. I clipped off the excess, left about 1/4 of an inch there. And now I'm pressing it. It's going to leave a little pocket for my tail. I'm basically creating a little pocket. And here, this is the little loopy where the stocking is going to hang. I cut this one a little bit larger than I should have. I cut it at 8 inches. It should have been cut at 6 in my opinion. And then I opened it up and I pressed the seams to the center, both sides, and then I folded them in half. Then what I should have done was stitched down to close it permanently, but I didn't. I just left it like this because I just forgot. That should have been done. So again, you're going to fold it in half and then you're going to stitch it closed. I did not stitch it closed. And I also didn't put this hoop where it should have been placed. I kind of pushed the thing to the side and it's kind of on the back, which isn't a big deal, but it's not directly over the seam, which is where it should be. On the outside, raw edges together. So the loopy part is down there by the toe and the raw part is up there with the rest of the raw edges. And now we're going to put our binding on. I just grabbed another one of those 2.5-inch strips. You saw me prep it a minute ago. And I decided to start it a little bit. I really didn't want too much going on where that seam is because it's already kind of bulky. And I'm going around and I'm using some Wonder Clips to clip it so it doesn't move too badly. When I tell you guys this stocking is quick, it's great. If you want to throw some handles on this and make it a gift bag, you totally could. You can knock this out in about an hour and a half, especially if you're doing a jelly roll strip. You don't have to cut your fabric. Yeah, you can knock this out really quickly. So I took the plate section off of my, the extender plate section off of my sewing machine so that I could stick it in there. And you see where I'm sewing. I'm going to start at the tip of that and we're just going to walk it all the way around. Not a big deal. Just sew it down all the way around. Raw edges are all together. So the fold is where my left hand is and then the raw edge is to my right. And I'm just sewing this all the way around. And I'm going to stop a little bit when I get to the section where I started. I'm not going to sew that all the way down. I'm going to stop. And you will see me do that in just a moment. Here we are. So I'm looking at where we started and I'm going to put a little clippy there so that I know how far up I need to clip at a diagonal angle. So I'm going to go up just a little bit more and I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to angle it toward that clip. So I'm cutting another 45-degree angle. You see that? And then you're going to stick that tip down into that little pocket that you created. And you want it to lay as flat as possible. And so I take the purple thing, which is blue because I don't know where my purple thing is, and just stuff it down in there. Stuff it, stuff it, stuff it. And then you're going to go where you stopped and just continue on and sew right down to over it until you meet the rest of the stitches. So just keep going until right there. Oops, there we go. And then stop. And now you've sewn it. Now I grab a little glue. You can hand stitch that down, but permanent glue works just fine. And you're going to permanently glue that little opening on the front and the back. And now you're going to turn it to the inside and you can either hand stitch it or machine stitch it. I don't love machine stitching it. I don't like the way that it looks, but it's fast. So I went ahead and did it. I caught myself stitching in the ditch. So right where those two fabrics meet, you're going to go ahead and sew through it, and hopefully you're catching the stuff on the back. And that's it, guys. Super fast, super easy.